All
right, you're all set.
Good. And thank you for all your help, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let me know if there's anything else I can do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, welcome, everyone. I just wanted to check the members again. I know I'm here, obviously. Lorraine, Henry, Karen.
Here I am.
Oh, great. Welcome, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Anna Nicuzzi. I know Gloria's here, and Jack had contacted me. He's not able to make it today. So welcome, everyone. We're calling the meeting to order today at 2:03. I wanted to do a slight adjustment to the agenda, if it's all right with everyone. We are very fortunate to having Bridgewater Town Engineer Greg Tangi join us today. So I had him second on the agenda. What I would like to do is put Greg on first, and then we'll go right into a DPPC presentation with Sarah Neckerman right after that. Is that all right with everybody?
Sure.
Great. So we're very fortunate to have Town Engineer Greg Tangi join us. Greg, if you could maybe take a few minutes to explain some of the duties and responsibilities in the position of Town Engineer. I know you're brand new to the position, but we look forward to hearing a little bit about it, and we're looking forward to working more closely with you as we go forward.
Thank you, David. For those of you just joining, I'm Greg Tanzi. I'm the new town engineer. I came on board mid-October of 2021, and I do a number of roles for the town. I do inspectional services, do a lot of subdivision reviews for the planning board. I also do a lot of site plan reviews for the planning board. And I review these for compliance with the regulations. And one of the regulations that we have here at Bridgewater that I'm happy to say is ADA regulations. And I will review these projects, whether it be a residential subdivision or a commercial site plan for a warehouse building, to make sure that it complies to all the applicable ADA regulations. The code that I predominantly take jurisdiction over is access ways that are outside of a building. I don't get involved with interior access routes and hallways and so forth, but I do get involved with parking, making sure that a particular parking lot that has a certain size and certain amount of parking spaces has the right amount of accessible spaces. I make sure that they have the right amount of van accessible spaces. I make sure that the grading of these spaces meets code. They can't be too flat and they can't be too steep. And one of the reasons for that is, for obvious reason, that if it's too steep, it can be dangerous for somebody who is challenged and is in a wheelchair. You don't want it flat either, because you can have a standing water situation or an icing situation, and you certainly wouldn't want that inhibiting and being a potential hazard to anybody, whether you're physically challenged or not. And I also look at curb cuts and ramps, making the the minimum and maximum grades allowable, that the runs aren't exceeded, that landing areas comply for clear space for accessibility. And there's a number of projects that came through that I reviewed, and I had to comment on what they were proposing for accessible spaces and access routes. Sometimes the engineer just who designed the plan wasn't careful, didn't take into close account of what the regulations are, and sometimes their ramps have been too steep, or their access routes have been too steep, and I'll call them on that, make them revise the plan to make sure that they comply with these regulations. We just had a plan that came before us not too long ago, and the applicant forgot to provide any access spaces. And so he was asked to provide them, and then I reviewed it. And, again, it didn't quite comply. So I had to, in my report, write it up and make sure that they got it right. What I do, I keep handy the ADA regulations, and Massachusetts has a supplement to the ADA regulations that's a little bit more strict with the parking counts. And I keep all these regulations handy when I'm reviewing these subdivisions or commercial site plans to ensure that compliance is maintained. So that's my role here at Bridgewater, and I'm very glad to see that we take accessibility very seriously. Accessibility requirements are built into our regulations, and they are oftentimes, they'll appear on conditions of approvals for permits. So that's encouraging to see too. So we're taking it seriously, and we're making sure that all new projects comply to the ADA standards as they apply to site plans, parking lots, so forth.
Great. Greg, we have a couple questions we would like to ask you. One question I had in particular, our Disability Commission has worked with the town of Bridgewater in regards to the memorial building and making sure it was going to be accessible for people with disabilities. What is the final decision for that building in regard to parking? I know it's kind of a tight situation over there. Were they going to end up with just one parking spot, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, unfortunately, David, I was not involved in the planning of that building, so I really can't speak to any accessible issues that may have come up during the planning phases. It's under construction now.
Right.
I am aware that there is very limited parking. I myself am slated to be moving into that building once it's completed, and I'll probably be parking in the library, but I'm sure that they will make it as accessible to the public as they can.
Mhm.
Sometimes with existing buildings, there's only so much you can do. If it can't be fully compliant, they can appeal and ask for variances. And then oftentimes, if it's a legitimate situation, the accessibility board is generally flexible enough
Right.
to accommodate the varying conditions that are encountered.
Greg, I'm glad to hear you moving closer to the center of town. I went
Yeah.
to visit you at your current location, and I didn't even realize it existed over there, and I've been here for 40 years.
Yeah, yeah.
A couple other things, questions that Lorraine Carosa had suggested we ask. What has been your past experiences with local disability commissions?
I haven't really had, I mean, I came from the private sector, and being a site engineer, I did have to engineer or make sure that any parking facility that I designed complied with ADA. I've never really had any issues with any boards. What I submitted to the town complied with the ADA regulations, and it was approved at the local level. So I never really had to go before any state or local boards. There was one instance where I had a client who bought a property where an old building had burnt down. And by right, he had the ability to replace that building on the same footing and foundation. And that's what he proposed to do. But he had to have it comply to ADA requirements. And this particular property and building had such severe site constraints that a ramp was just not feasible. And he proposed a chairlift. And that would have required a variance from the access board in Boston. And I spoke with the chairman of it, and he said, okay, yeah, I understand your constraints, and that's an acceptable way to get around it. But the local boards didn't accept that. They didn't want the building to be replaced. It was politics at its worst, unfortunate. And they denied, or they denied the project on the technicality that a wheelchair lift, which didn't meet the local zoning regs, doesn't constitute a ramp. And it dealt with regulations that really weren't adequately written. And the town council was telling me that there weren't any lawsuits as case studies to support my claim. And I had a feeling that that wasn't true, but I'm not an attorney, so I had no way of looking up case law, and the attorney knew that. So I contacted the access board and spoke to the chairman in Boston, and I explained to him the situation that I was in, and I said, has there been any litigation on the situation that I'm dealing with? And he says, oh, sure, I've got the case study right here. And he emailed it to me, and I submitted it into the town, and they still denied it. And they denied the project. So what would have been a facility that could have accommodated physically challenged people never materialized. And that's one of the sadder experiences that I've had. It wasn't with the board per se, but it was with town politics that unfortunately exist. It wasn't in this town. It wasn't Bridgewater. It was a different. Right. It wasn't a different town. I just want to make it clear to that. But you know, the boards that I've dealt with on that situation, that chairman was very informative. He had told me that certain, and he was familiar with the project because there was a lot of abutters that didn't want this project to go through, and they were trying to coerce the chairman of the ADA to, you know, say that the project couldn't go forth, and of course he wouldn't do that. But he filled me in on some of the politicking that was going on that particular project. And, you know, it just kind of goes to show you, you know, a good legitimate effort can, you know, sometimes get, you know, squelched by unfortunate members of local boards.
Right.
But that only happened once. Usually, like I said, my experiences, I just comply with the regs, and I've really haven't had any real issues other than that one time. And the ADA chairman and the board, he was very helpful to me, and I was very grateful for all his help, very supportive. But sometimes, you know, you can only do so much, unfortunately.
Greg, we're glad to have you here today. I have a statement and another question, because I think the Bridgewater Disability Commission can work well with you in your new position. And some of the things we've done in the past, you know, I feel like we're almost after the fact. Like, for instance, the Academy building, we found that it was very difficult to get into the building for people with disabilities. Now, what has happened in the past with the building, the walkway from the side area where the parking is was very rough and tough to maneuver with a wheelchair or walkers. And last year they redid the walkway, and this year they're going to add a secondary entrance on the side that will be able to be open for people with disabilities. It'll be one of those push button doors that the door pops open when you work it. But these are all after the fact things. And some of the things you said that what you specialize in is kind of the outside accessibility to the building, is a lot of the things that we work with also. So we look forward to working with you in regard to that. I do have another question from a member, also Lorraine. What do you perceive to be the top issues and concerns in Bridgewater regarding our infrastructure?
When you say our infrastructure, are you saying the municipal infrastructure, or as a whole, a community as a whole, both private and municipal?
The community.
As a community?
Yeah.
Well, probably the biggest challenge would be the older buildings that just, you know, were built before there was, you know, standard building codes. I mean, some of these older buildings, they've got granite stone steps, and these, you know, certain steps like that, they're not even, you know, each run is not precisely the same height and the same width. And, you know, that kind of reverts back to the days before building codes either existed or were not as well defined as they are today. So the biggest challenges would be the older buildings, and they're always the biggest, the most challenging to bring into compliance with ADA requirements.
Is there anyone that has questions for Greg at this point? No. Henry?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, if there's no more questions, Greg, I thank you for your time. I believe that we as a commission look forward to working with you as we go forward and you go forward. You've given us some valuable insights and information today, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Greg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it was a a pleasure meeting you and your board. And I'm glad that I could have been of some help here. And I do look forward to assisting the commission in any capacity that I can in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
you.
You
too.
also. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. Chris Hartman, are you on today?
How's everyone?
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, great.
Chris, do you have any updates for us on the side entrance to the Academy building?
I do, yes. Happy to share some good news. We're making progress on our timeline. I spoke with the owner of door installation company that's slated to install our new door and our new control paddles. They've got the door, they checked over specs. They're planning and 4 to 5 weeks out to install doors. And a couple constraints that we spoke about really mainly boil down to scheduling the door installers with the control techs to do to install the electrical paddles. And it really boils down to tying them in schedule wise and hitting a good window where there's no rain and there's good weather, because that's actually have a big impact on installing the doors. So we're on their radar, and we've got a concrete timeline, and we're just staying in touch week to week. That was the most recent update that I received from him yesterday. So so he's on top of it, and feel pretty confident that the spring will finally knock it out and move on from there. So.
Chris, after 3 years, that's probably the most concrete information we have ever heard. So thank you. It's great to hear.
Sure.
Is there any other new renovations, anything else going on in Bridgewater you'd like to share with us today?
Sure. So we did get some approval to move forward with some projects that town management had wanted to see move forward at the senior center. And Emily, the director of the senior center, has been pretty diligent and upbeat about moving forward with these projects. And we're kicking it off with a side door renovation. I guess it's the year for doors, so we're sticking with that theme. We're installing a commercial double door. If you're looking at the building, it would be on the left side, exiting to the side parking lot there. And that's one phase of our overall planned renovation for the senior center as it stands now. So we did a little electrical prep yesterday, and contractors slated to pull out the single door that's existing now in the building later this week. We're going to pop in a nice new French double door with, I believe, 9 lights on both doors. So it'll aesthetically, it'll look fantastic. We ran through some compliance requirements and made sure that we're meeting what's needed there. So Steve had weighed in and kind of injected what he was looking for. So we've got basically the threshold clearance that we need exiting and passing through the door. There's a little bit of a height requirement so that if you're so it's wheelchair accessible and it won't impede anybody going in and out of the door. And then we've got crash bars on there as well. So if there ever were an emergency, we're not turning a knob, we're not twisting a handle or anything. We're just pushing the door open and going. So, so it'll look really nice. The door's on site, and so far so good with our timeline there. We're looking to be in good shape. And we are making headway on our overall, what's really more of more in the spotlight is our front portico structure that we've been kind of going back and forth a little bit on. We made some minor adjustments after reviewing plans, and we are just waiting in the wings right now. We're expecting engineered plans for the structure itself. And at that point, we can move forward to the next phase of construction there. But everything right now is just hinging on getting some concrete plans in place. And that's really phase 2 of it. So once that door is in place, that'll give us access to the senior center where, you know, the front door will be inaccessible for a period of time once we start getting into construction of the portico there. So, so looking forward to that. A lot of wheels in motion, but it's nice to see that they're coming to fruition and being delivered. So
Definitely.
so it's exciting.
David, can I ask a quick question?
You certainly can, Lorraine.
I just wanted some clarification. The side door, you said to the left, out there, there's 2 side doors, you know, in the senior center.
There are,
Which
yes.
one would it be? So,
The one closest to the front.
oh,
Is that-
okay. Okay. I assumed that, but I wasn't sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have questions for Chris? Chris, I did see the most recent drawings of the portico, and I think it really looks impressive, and I think it's going to add a lot of space and a lot of beauty to the front of the building. And I know there was some talk about, you know, changing the shape of the posts and, you know, a few other things, but I think the basic structure is definitely going to be a win-win for the senior center.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's what we've, you know, the details matter. So once everyone had weighed in on, you know, on moldings on the rake boards and the size of the posts and the diameter of the posts and everything else, that was something that we did hash out. But, you know, the end results will be within keeping of what everyone would like to see. So, so it's exciting. Looking forward to it.
It is exciting. Chris, we always enjoy having you on our meetings. Thank you very much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, and thank you for being patient with us, Sarah Neckerman. Sarah is an outreach and training specialist. She works for Disabled Persons Protection Commission, DPPC, and the DPPC is looking to connect with commissions on disability across Massachusetts to provide information about the agency and its abuse reporting hotline, so that commission members can be better prepared to make reports of their own, and so they can disseminate this information to others in the area. Sarah will share with us a presentation, and at the end, we have allotted time for questions. So Sarah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You took my whole introduction here, so
Oh,
I don't really have anything
sorry.
left to say. No, I appreciate it. I don't think I have the ability to share my screen just yet. It looks like you have to give me permission.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I can see you.
You should be all set now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. All right.
Yep.
So yeah, like you said, I'm with the Disabled Persons Protection Commission, or the DPPC. We'll talk for maybe 10-15 minutes about just who we are and about our abuse reporting hotline. We've been doing this outreach for several months now because, you know, mandated reporters, people who work with people with disabilities really closely, tend to know who we are. But the general public, not so much. You know, folks are familiar with DCF or Child Protective Services, and we do similar work, but in a different population. So instead of investigating abuse against children, we investigate abuse against adults with disabilities. So those are folks between the age of 18 and 59 who have a disability that requires them to have a caregiver of some sort. So they need help with some or all of their daily living needs, whether that's dealing with transportation, medication, finances, or more basic stuff like food or showering or things like that. And the reason we only investigate when folks need a caregiver is because we are specifically investigating abuse by those caregivers. Okay, so the caregiver can be paid or unpaid, it can be a family member, it can be a professional, so long as that person is helping them meet some of those daily living needs. This graphic shows how we fit in with some of these other agencies you might be familiar with. So if the victim is younger than 18, that report of abuse would go to DCF, the Department of Children and Families, and their hotline is at the bottom here. I'll also put all of these numbers into the chat so that you guys don't have to copy them down just now. If the person is 18 to 59 and they do have a disability, that comes to us. And if they are age 60 or over, whether they have a disability or not, that goes to the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, or EOEA. And I know a lot of commissions work closely with senior centers and the like. So their number, if you ever need it, is 1-800-922-2275. So I want to do a little bit of a scenario here just to give us kind of a framework for what kinds of cases you can report to the DPPC. So the scenario is that Brian is a member of the Bridgewater Disability Commission. His next door neighbor is a man named Arthur who has an intellectual disability and attends a day program outside of town. Twice recently, Arthur has returned from the day program with injuries, and he's been more withdrawn than usual. Brian suspects some sort of abuse is happening at the program, but he has no proof. He hasn't seen anybody abuse Arthur, and Arthur hasn't told him anything. The question is, do these circumstances warrant a report to DPPC? And the answer is that it absolutely does. Brian does not need proof to report because the standard for reporting in Massachusetts is just reasonable cause to believe that abuse or neglect exists. You can also think about this like suspicion. Right? Suspicion is not, I am 100% sure, I have evidence, I have conducted my own investigation. Suspicion is just, I think something might be happening here. Okay. What types of abuse can you report? You can report suspicion of physical abuse, suspicion of emotional abuse. We also call this verbal abuse. This is kind of like bullying. So when somebody is, yelling at a person, making fun of them, putting them down, giving them the silent treatment, stuff that you would see from, the schoolyard bully, but which adults definitely do as well and causes some real emotional harm. You can report suspicion of sexual abuse, suspicion of neglect or omission. So the caregiver is supposed to be taking care of this person in some way and they're not, and the person is facing harm as a result. And you can report deaths when you suspect that abuse played a role. So when you have suspicion of abuse, what do? You call this number. This is our 24-hour abuse reporting hotline. The number is 1-800-426-9009. I recommend writing this down or putting it in your phone or whatever is going to make it available to you if you ever need it. Okay. Anytime you call this number, you will get a live person on the other end. They'll ask you a few basic questions. What happened, where, when, who was involved. Anything that you don't know the answer to, it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say it over and over again. If you really don't know, that's just the process. We had someone report once and all they had was a license plate number, and we were still able to investigate that case. I want to briefly talk about mandated reporters, just in case anybody on this call is a mandated reporter because of a position you have outside of the commission, or in case you know of any mandated reporters in town who would benefit from more information on this. So a mandated reporter is basically somebody who works in a certain profession that gives them maybe more access to people with disabilities and makes it more likely that they would have opportunity to suspect abuse of an adult with a disability. So these are folks like medical professionals, police officers, teachers, as well as folks working directly with people with disabilities in a group home, day program, residential program. That's kind of what those last two bullets mean. We have a free training that we offer to mandated reporters. It's an hour to an hour and a half. Folks can sign up for one of our kind of bi-monthly trainings using this Eventbrite link here, or they can contact us directly and we can schedule something. So if you know of any groups in town who would benefit from this, feel free to connect us and we can try to work something out. I want to talk briefly about what the process looks like after you make a report. So the report goes into the hotline. The hotline person is going to ask you those basic questions and then send that report where it needs to go. So one place they might send it is to an investigator. So this is if the report meets all of our criteria, right? They're between the age of 18 and 59 at the time of abuse. They were abused by a caregiver. So these are civil investigators, and they might be from either DPPC or from one of our partner agencies. That's Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, Department of Mental Health, or DMH, and Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, or MRC. Okay. So one of these investigators will get assigned. If you were the one who made the report, they will probably call you up pretty quickly, pretty soon, and ask you some more detailed questions about what happened and what you know. And they are basically trying to figure out what happened, was this abuse, and who was involved. Okay, so they are fact finders. And if they find out that yes, abuse did happen, they can make these protective services recommendations. These are recommendations to either support the victim in moving on from the abuse, so recommending things like counseling, healthcare, peer support, transportation. These are really tailored to what the victim needs in their particular situation. Or these can look like preventing future abuse. So that can mean respite services, other resources, or training for a caregiver who maybe could provide good care, but is just overwhelmed or doesn't have the resources that they need. For professional caregivers, this can look like training, policy changes, staffing ratio changes, especially when that caregiver was maybe doing what they were told to do, but somebody still got hurt. And we can recommend agency action. We cannot fire people. We don't have the authority, but the agencies that are employing these professional caregivers are often looking to our report to figure out what they should do, essentially, whether they should keep this person on or whether they should reassign them or terminate them. We also have a new abuser registry. So if somebody has been found to have committed abuse against a person with an intellectual or a developmental disability, and if that person is connected to the Department of Developmental Services in some way, they can get put on this registry. And that means that they can no longer work with people with intellectual or developmental disabilities as a caregiver. So that prevents folks from abusing someone in one job and then turning around, getting a new job and doing it somewhere else. So in addition to the civil investigator, these reports can also get sent to other agencies, especially if we find that it's not something that we can investigate. So we can send it to DCF, to EOEA, to the Department of Public Health. If it involves Social Security checks, we can send it to the Social Security Administration, things like that. We also have a sexual assault response unit, which is screening all of these reports that come in for sexual abuse. And they can work directly with the survivors to get them the resources and the support that they need. SAR also includes a peer support program. So peer support leaders are DPPC employees who have intellectual or developmental disabilities and are survivors of sexual abuse. And they can work directly with other survivors with those types of disabilities to kind of show them that they're not alone in this process, to share what helped them get through their own trauma, and to provide just social support during what can be a really isolating time. So that's a really important resource that we offer as well. Finally, we have a state police detective unit, which is housed at DPPC and is screening all of the reports that come in for criminal abuse. And they can conduct a criminal investigation alongside our civil investigation. So that just makes sure that there's more communication and information sharing between those two groups. This is my contact information. I'll put my email address in the chat as well. If you ever have questions or want to schedule another training or get some resources to disseminate around town, we have flyers, we have magnets, water bottles, all sorts of stuff that we can mail out as well. So I am going to stop sharing and open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Sarah, before we go to questions, you provided a lot of great information. Would you be able to send me like an email of the overview and I could share it with anyone that from the group that's interested?
You mean a copy of the slides?
Yes. Yeah, that would be great because of his phone
Yeah.
numbers and a lot of important information. Excellent. I appreciate that. Other questions, folks?
I have a couple.
Oh, go ahead, Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
Sarah, I'm Karen Eicher. I'm a professor at Bridgewater State University. Have you worked with folks like, so one guy who's on our commission who's not here today is Zach Chipman from the Excel program. And the Excel program works with students with developmental disabilities and other kinds of disabilities between the ages of 18 and now up to about 25 or 26. Have you worked with the program leaders or their ed coaches at all for this kind of training?
I'm not sure that I personally have worked with Excel. We have one other trainer on our team who has done some trainings as well, so I could ask her, but if not, I think that would be a great connection and would love to do a training with them.
Because it makes sense, and I'm sure that the leadership in Excel are well versed in this kind of stuff, but they have new student volunteers and new student workers almost every semester. And so it might be helpful for them to learn what to watch for, either because of their role with the student they're working with on our campus, or because of where they're heading in their careers. Which brings me to question number 2. I work in the speech pathology department, and all of our students will become mandated reporters. And I'm just wondering, is this, the connection you talk about meeting with folks, is this something we could offer to our graduate students, or would you prefer to wait until they're out in their careers?
Yeah, no, we would love to. My colleague Jennifer has been specifically reaching out to programs like that. So if they haven't gotten a training from us, I think that would be really good to schedule.
Yeah, because I mean, not only, so I'm in the College of Education and Health Sciences, so we certainly have teachers who are mandated reporters. We have people who are working towards becoming athletic trainers who will be mandated reporters. So I can bring this up with my department chair as well as my dean to see if we can set up some trainings for our students, especially our grad students who will be hands-on very, very soon. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Great. Is there any other questions? Lorraine, go ahead,
Hi.
Lorraine.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I did have the pleasure of working with your agency for many years because I was the former Elder Affairs Director here in Bridgewater. And I don't know if you're aware, I know Susan Love, she retired a while back, but she had been in the field for quite some time. I just had a quick question on the process. I know with EOEA, where we were obviously mandated reporters or whatever, what we found a lot where people were afraid to provide a report. They were afraid of what would happen, the repercussions for that individual, that senior, what they would face, or even the senior themselves to report an issue. There was a lot of fear because they're still living, with the perpetrator or whatever it might be. But the other question that I had is there a time frame, or do you necessarily, the person who does do the report, is there a time frame where they would hear back on the status of that? Or they wouldn't hear on the status of the case, of the report?
So
on that.
reporters have a right to a
Mhm.
copy of the final report. It's not sent out automatically most of the time. You have to make a particular request.
Okay,
And I can find the email address for that and send it out to you all as well. I don't think I can find it just now, but I can send it out after this.
well, I know a lot of times they would screen in a case and then they would just, realize that they would have to screen it back out.
Mhm.
Due to, obviously the individual didn't want to move forward, when you would go to the home and would try to, speak to them or whatever, and they just wouldn't want any part of it. So they would have to screen out the case because it would be their, the client determination, self-determination, whatever. So sometimes it becomes very difficult, when others report and then you reach that point where you go to the individual's home and, and then they don't want any part of it because they're still living with those individuals or whatever. So sometimes it's a bit of a catch-22, but
Yeah.
I think your agency does great work, on
Thank you.
what you provide.
Yeah, DPPC is a little bit different from EOEA in
Right.
that if a victim is not interested in giving an interview or what have you, we still conduct the investigation. We'll
Mhm.
just talk to other people instead.
Oh,
So
good.
that wouldn't be a reason for us to screen it out.
Oh, that's good. Great.
Mhm.
Is there any other questions for Sarah at this point? Well, Sarah, thank you very, very much for your time. It was very, very informational. I think we've all learned a lot. We look forward to working with you in the future also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go
Thank
ahead
you.
and put that information in the chat, and feel free to shoot me an email if you need any more.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again, Sarah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Okay, moving right along, folks. And that was a great presentation, by the
Yes.
way.
Definitely.
I want to interject one thing into the agenda. Evelyn DeLutis, are you still on? Yes, you are. So Evelyn actually met me at the Senior Center in Bridgewater and brought up the following topic, which I thought was pretty important. And it was basically looking into a sign language interpreter for Bridgewater. And based on my discussion with Evelyn, I wrote to both Mike Dutton and Matt Rushton in my capacity as chairs of both the Elder Affairs Commission and the Disability Commission. We have run into the situation quite often that many individuals struggle with hearing properly in both meetings and events. This issue has been exacerbated in recent years by increased use of Zoom in similar meetings, making it even more difficult for individuals with hearing loss. I would ask the question if Bridgewater has the availability of a sign language interpreter, whether of a volunteer status or a part-time on-call status. This could aid in Bridgewater town meetings, commission meetings, etc., as a need required. In many cases, the ADA specifies that an effective communication may be as simple as a written note. Dealing with individuals with partial hearing loss, that might be sufficient. There are also cases when a sign language interpreter would be necessary. The ADA very clearly states the need for proper communication with hard of hearing and deaf individuals. Specifically, the ADA states no individual shall be discriminated against on the basis of disability in the full and equal enjoyment of goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, or accommodations of any place of public accommodation by any person who owns, leases, or operates a place of public accommodation. Bridgewater may already have access to a sign language interpreter, a fact that I'm not currently aware. I look forward to your thoughts on the subject. And I did not hear back yet. And now on their behalf, it's only been since the end of last week, but it has been a few days and I haven't heard back in regard to that. I did get some great feedback from both Karen and some feedback from Marilee Hunt. Marilee's comments were, from my experience running a Commonwealth-wide governor's commission of 300 plus people, some of whom were deaf or hard of hearing. I was told written language translations, e.g. subtitles or printed word translations, were considered offensive because many deaf persons, and she's making a distinction between deaf community, capital D, and those who consider themselves deaf or hard of hearing are not readers. I found it out the hard way, passing a note one day and discovering I had offended. So she just put that out there to protect anyone from potential embarrassment. And
I
Karen,
have a lot to say
oh,
about
good,
all
and we'd love to hear it.
So as I mentioned earlier, and I do work, I have been a speech language pathologist since 1982. I work with people who have worked in the deaf community, as well as people who are deaf, who, as an FYI, was refused from working on the movie Coda. So there you go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, yeah, the folks who were very visible were definitely deaf. But other than that, anyhow, there's a lot going on. And Evie, I think I remember hearing that you have been a teacher for many, many years. And so you're aware that education for the deaf has evolved over the last 40 years. Quite a lot. And so Marilee's experience with the deaf community, capital letters, the extent to which someone can read well will vary with their age. So deaf people who are our age did not necessarily acquire even basic literacy skills. That said, that comment made a few people hit the roof in my world. Like, what do you mean deaf people can't read? So, and the idea of passing notes, one of the concerns with that is that the information is filtered and is not time sensitive. And so that decreases the deaf person's autonomy and agency during those meetings, that they cannot participate as a full participant. Now, the idea of a ASL interpreter means that the person has to speak ASL, or that has to be their communication strategy. We do not have currently any students on campus who use ASL as their primary communication strategy, but there's a good reason for that. Framingham has an entire program for that. So most deaf and hard of hearing folks or people who are interested in that community are going up to Framingham for college instead of coming to Bridgewater. So it's not like we don't want them, but there are better options within a reasonable drive. If a government agency or any kind of municipal agency wants to use an interpreter, they are required to use a registered interpreter for the deaf. And Marilee has expressed that it's been very hard to get them. That is becoming easier, especially with the RID training program at Framingham State and other places. So that addresses the needs of the culturally deaf community, but that's a very small group. And what we could do is ask for people who have specific needs to let folks know ahead of time that they would come, because I don't think it makes sense to have an ASL interpreter at every meeting, because we don't always have deaf people at every meeting. Now, for the rest of the hard of hearing community, which many of us know folks, whether they will admit that or not. Exactly. There are a number of things that can happen. Now, Zoom is aware that their early closed captioning was terrible. And they have been working to improve that. And the last couple of meetings that I've had, the closed captioning on Zoom and on things that are live streamed on YouTube is much more consistent with what I'm hearing. Every now and then you'll hear some weird stuff, but especially if the person has accented speech. But that does not include so far Boston accents, except for a few words, because they just don't like the R's at the ends of words, the Boston accent. You know, God forbid someone would ask for butter. But anyhow, so closed captioning is a valid option. And truthfully, it also works for many of our younger people who are culturally deaf, because they are much more literate than previous generations would have been. So that is something that can accommodate people who are attending webinars. Now, what do we do about activities at the senior center? Here's what I have been suggesting in my quiet way, and I think it's something right now I can't attend the Elder Affairs Committee meeting because they're when I'm teaching, but starting in May, I'll be able to, and I can bring this up again. There are reasonably inexpensive devices that hospitals use all the time that I have used in therapy when I've worked with people called assisted listening devices. And they almost look like those old Sony Walkman headphones. And there are two things. There are some that will just amplify all of the sound. And then there are other systems where what they hear is connected to a microphone that the speaker is wearing. And Evie, you may have had some of those in the classrooms that you've taught in to kind of focus someone's attention.
I actually have a bone anchored hearing aid right here, a cochlear, and I have the microphone to give to the speaker. So I have been able to use that myself.
Yep. And there are folks who don't necessarily have the bone anchored hearing aid or the cochlear implant. And there are removable headphones that they can wear that in a large group situation where there's a presentation would be more successful for them than their hearing aid.
And there are theaters that I have gone to, particularly Mansfield, the Black Box Theater in Mansfield. And as you go in, they have those earphones that you can put on if you're hard of hearing.
Yeah, and so that's becoming more and more common. And as it becomes more common, the ones with more bells and whistles are becoming more affordable. But even the basic unit with just, the microphone in the box has been usually less than $200.
Karen, would there be governmental grants for something like that for senior centers?
It's possible. We can talk to Emily about accessibility grants.
Right.
I know that for some of the older people that I was working with in Connecticut, many of them chose the assisted listening device with the box you put on the table instead of a hearing aid because it was an order of magnitude cheaper. I mean, a hearing aid is thousands of dollars and this was $200. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. The other thing they really loved, which is just a bonus information, are the TV ears, which the person puts these up and they can hear the louder TV and their family can sit in the room with them instead of watching the same show from the other room behind them. So TV ears have saved marriages and saved roommates and allowed grandchildren to watch sporting events with grandpa without losing their own hearing. So there are some wonderful tools that are out there, and some of them are becoming more and more affordable that would meet our needs. And so I would like to suggest that the town, every emergency room has assisted listening devices, and most intensive care units have them because very few people put their hearing aids in if they're having a medical emergency. And so you have to be able to communicate with them. And so these are not like some secret thing that's out there. The town and agencies or groups that are working with folks. In fact, it might even make sense for Jed to have a pair or two at the library for the different programs that are held at the library.
That's a great idea.
So I can see some of them just being stored. The tricky thing for the people, and there's just like, well, what about the hygiene? What about the upkeep? There's all kinds of ways of dealing with that, but the upkeep basically amounts to just checking the battery.
Good.
So,
Is there any questions?
So we've got these two communities. We've got folks who have been typically hearing for most of their lives, who are now trying to stay active, and their hearing barrier is creating a problem for them in certain situations. And God bless you if you are in the 99 with your hearing aids, because that's just awful. There's so much like dish noises and foot noises that it's hard to hear the conversation. And
restaurants are terrible.
And even at the senior center, so you're watching a presentation in one room and they've got the drums in the other. And it's like, both of them are exciting. But that low frequency noise tends to be disproportionately amplified by hearing aids.
I can imagine.
So anyway, these are I was gonna say well more than 2 cents, But
Well, that's very important. We appreciate it. Evelyn, would you like to add anything more? Did we cover everything that you were looking for?
No, in fact, you covered more than what I was looking for because
Good.
I know it is a state law that people who are deaf and they go to a public meeting need to be accommodated for that disability. And I was talking to David about it. I had just learned about it. And I thought to myself, oh, I never knew this existed. I'm not totally deaf by any means, but my hearing is not good. So anyhow, and then can I add that little extra that I told you about, David, in terms, Lorraine and I were there to hear Chief McDermott
Mhm.
speak
Certainly.
about 3 weeks ago about safety. And we all learned, I don't think anybody there except he knew that none of the apartments in Bridgewater, no matter how many floors high they are required to have generators.
Mhm.
Which means that if a fire breaks out, there's no generator. That means there's no elevator. If there's a disabled person, and he explained it to us, if there's a disabled person on the 3rd floor, it will take 4 to 6 of his men to get the person out safely. And that means he has less men to fight the fire. Well,
Yeah.
I kept thinking about this and I kept thinking,
Mhm.
he said there is a law in Boston that has been sitting there for a long time that would require these generators. Correct me on anything if I'm wrong, Lorraine. But
No, you're right. Yeah.
I asked him, like
Mhm.
the new buildings in back of the McElwain School,
Mhm.
just building them. No, they're not required to have generators. So as he pointed out, it'll take a real horrible accident to make this bill come to fruition. And I just think it's wrong. I think,
It's
and
wrong.
if anything that we in Bridgewater can
Mhm.
do to write into Boston and say, get this bill moving.
Mhm.
I think of friends that I have that are in apartments in Axis up near the NIP and,
Yeah.
and the new place, and our senior center, not
Yeah.
senior,
Senior housing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
I know.
It,
Yeah.
it has, I came home and I told my daughter about it. I was telling everybody, I thought, this is wrong. Why is this not a law?
I know. So I wonder if we just find out where it's stalled, what the bill is, what's the number, and just get information about the bill. And
Yeah.
then maybe try to figure out from that point on what we do to try to, as a community, move it forward,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, now we do have a large generator in our town, as he
Mhm.
pointed out, but it's on a first come, first served basis.
Yes.
It was given to us by MEMA
Mhm.
because of the Plymouth power plant, and now that's closed. But for the last year, that generator has been in Brockton
Yeah.
because they needed it for some kind of a bad snowstorm or power outage or whatever.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't available to us or any other town included in that first come, first served basis. I don't know.
I think it might be out of Brockton now, but it's still up in the air at the where it is and who's going to get first come first serve. It almost seems like we should have our own at the senior center so that if there was a power outage emergency, which we've had several in the last couple of years for multiple days, that there would be a place for people to go to get warm or in the summer to get cool.
Well,
So-
that was the first thing he pointed out to us, was that after our last power outage, he got loads of calls from senior citizens saying, why couldn't we go to the senior center
Yeah.
for food and to be warm? Well, there was no generator there. It
Mhm.
was in Brockton.
Yeah.
So,
I
Well,
can add some additional
Karen,
considerations.
sure. Go ahead.
So again, based on my former life before moving to Bridgewater, there are multi-story nursing homes, multi-story assisted livings. And one of the things that they do, because even with a generator, which they are required to have, depending on where the fire is, the elevator may be compromised directly. And so the generator does not solve every problem. Fire doors can buy time. And that is so and even on our campus, I was up on the 3rd floor of a building we don't have very many buildings with that many floors, but there, I was informed, since I had a student in a wheelchair, where she was to shelter safely until the firefighters arrived, and then they would make the decision if it was safe for her to go down the elevator with them, because they have the key to do the express,
yes.
or if they would need to carry her and her chair down 3 flights of stairs. Because those are your 2 choices. If there is, God forbid, a fire, first thing you always want to be safe. And so where can we be safe? And just so they know, our university knows where every single physically disabled person is if they're in class. And so if there is a fire in Hart Hall, God forbid, they would know which classrooms this person would be in. And if we have that kind of student in our classroom, where should we be to be with them to make sure that the firemen don't forget us? And how do we keep everybody safe? So fire doors buy time for rescue. And then the generator may help, or it may take the 4 or 6 guys to haul someone down the stairs if the elevator itself is compromised, or if it leads into an area that's compromised.
Right. And the other thing he pointed out to us is that if a disabled person is coming to live in the building there across from the NIP, and they're wheelchair confined or whatever, it is discrimination to tell them, we'll give you an apartment on the 1st floor. That's being discriminatory. So they can say, no, I don't want to be on the 1st floor. I want to be on the 3rd floor and whatever. And so that's when he went into his whole explanation of how many of his fire people it would take to get a wheelchair or very seriously handicapped person out of the building. It just set me back on my heels.
Yeah.
And I think most of the people there
Mhm.
react the same way.
Exactly. It was an eye opener, wasn't it? It was an eye opener.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Is there any more questions or anything anyone would like to bring up? Karen, did you have any more to add to it? You're all set? Well, thank you. That is kind of an eye opener. I will agree. The next topic we have is Marathon Park. And the last meeting we had, I had mentioned, Town Manager Mike Dutton has suggested the Disability Commission could be helpful developing another comprehensive list on potential improvements to Marathon Park and researching potential grants that would be appropriate for us to apply to make those improvements. Henry, you went to Marathon Park on your own
I did a
recently.
few weeks ago, and it looks really good down there now, David. They leveled the whole parking lot. They must have put a coating of crushed stone or whatever. It's really nice. They put down wood chips around a lot of the stuff and rubber mats. And they also have some new, I don't want to call them rides, but new slide things and swings. They look really, really good.
Good. That's nice that they're keeping up with that.
But they did stuff without asking us our input too, so.
And I know. Well, that's going back to the usual. So the interesting thing, Mike Dutton suggested we could be helpful developing the list. Well, Henry, myself, and a representative from that East Bridgewater, what was the name of that group. East
I can't
Bridgewater.
remember the gentleman, but I don't remember the organization.
Yeah, there was a professional that we walked in depth, made a list that basically went nowhere. I would like to try again, and Henry, if you're interested,
Sure.
I would walk the Marathon Park with you, come up with the list. I think we spent enough time several years ago that we could figure out a lot of the things that we're looking for. And I would like to do that list again. Now that we're kind of on the cusp of spring, I think we could walk that soon. And there's changes, just like Henry suggested, there's been some improvements and so forth. So I think we have a lot we would see when we get there. He has informed the commission prior that a donor had offered to replace the broken equipment and supply underswing mats. And it sounds like the donor did everything already that they were talking about.
Yeah, no porta potties there yet, and the still just the 2 temporary handicap signs in the front.
Okay. He also suggested, and I don't know if anyone has some ideas in regards to this, we should be researching potential grants. And I would ask, who among us has the experience and the expertise to train us to begin the process? I'm not familiar with this. This could be a great learning experience for the group and enable us to do some good for Bridgewater at the same time. And learning how to work on grants could go into other areas also. I know, Lorraine, you've done that before. Karen, you may have
I've done some limited grants with EOEA, Executive Office of Elder Affairs, but they were just limited, you know, and that's
Right.
and that was it.
I'm just going to suggest Emily, because she's been spending a lot of time trying to find money, and perhaps we can,
Yeah.
you know, that seems to be a strength that she has brought with her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's exploit it and let's kind of take some of the burden off her. If she can teach us and perhaps even some of our interns, and because I'm thinking about like my intern for the fall, how to find these grants and how to do some of the legwork so that she can then file them, that would be a bonus for her and a bonus for the town.
Right. Yeah.
So based on that, and I totally agree with you, Karen, how would everyone feel if I was to reach out to Emily from our group, the Disability Commission, and ask that we could maybe get together in a separate meeting that we could have her explain to us the process. I mean, she's got some good money coming into the senior center.
Yeah, she does.
And you're right. And maybe we can, just as Karen said, have her teach us, have her share with us, and then that would maybe take some of the issues away from her if other people can also reach out for the grant. So would everyone agree I should be reaching out to Emily for this?
Sure. Yeah.
She's very
like
tech
a
savvy.
grant money bloodhound note. Like, how does she find these things? It's
Yeah,
amazing.
she's very tech savy. She really is, and she knows, you know, exactly where to start pinpointing her search on, you know. So
I would say the same thing, Karen and Lorraine, because I don't know. I mean, she just has money coming from everywhere, and it's a wonderful thing. The next thing I have on the agenda is the Bridgewater Rainham CPAC. Karen, did you have anything more to share in regard to that?
They have not responded to any of my emails.
Okay.
So, and just so to fill in Evie, because I know she's a guest, but I also know she's had connections with the schools. We identified in the Disability Commission that we hear a lot about the issues for adults, but nothing about any challenges that families with children would be experiencing. So I reached out to the CPAC in the Bridgewater schools, and this will shock you that the information on their website was like 2 years old. And the people who used to serve gave me the new email, they CC'd them, and it's been radio silence. Now, part of that was their first, their winter break, but then they haven't responded since then. But I know there's so much going on, but I will reach out to them yet again and just keep them kind of on the radar, even if they don't have any issues, because I realize that the CPAC is not just for the physically disabled children. They have a lot of things they worry about with reading and learning disabilities and all of that. So, but I do want the CPAC as kind of our connection to parents to realize that the Disability Commission is here for all residents, birth to whenever. So if you have any other ideas, that'd be great.
Do Do you know who's the chairperson of CPAC?
No, I don't. In fact, the email they gave me now, instead of making it a specific person, they've just created a generic email for the CPAC so that it doesn't change every time there's a change in leadership. So I don't actually know.
I wonder if they have a Facebook page.
I don't know.
I honestly think I've received things on Facebook from CPAC.
Oh, nice. You know,
So
a friend of mine is very involved with the West Bridgewater CPAC, but I haven't heard much about the Bridgewater one. But again, my role at the university is with adults with acquired problems, so I don't do kids. And I used to, and I blame those little chairs for blowing out my knees. And now I do nothing with kids. I can't sit in those stupid little chairs. But
that's why I had to have back surgery, because I tried a million pair of shoes.
yeah, it's just like those chairs are down there. Good
Yeah.
God.
Wow.
At least I'm short, and they get when in my last job with kids, they let me sit in the 6th grader chairs. I'm like, okay.
Well, those are probably full size, just about.
Almost, yeah, exactly. So, but again, and it's just that we had not identified a problem, but we do want them to realize that the Disability Commission is for all ages, not just the adults.
Okay.
Right, right. The last thing I have today, and I'm going to skip all business because we're getting into a rather long meeting, and we'll just end with the number 7 on my agenda topics. I would ask that the members of the Disability Commission provide agenda topics that they're interested in discussing and pursuing to me a minimum of 2 weeks prior to the next planned meeting. I'd like to get everybody's involvement, you know, not just myself as chair, you know, so forth, coming up with topics. I really would like to get a full vote of everyone being involved. So I look forward to your suggestions and additional information. And I thought today was a really interesting meeting. First of all, I thought it was kind of important that we met with Greg Tangi. As a town engineer, a lot of the stuff he does comes right into what we're looking for. He's working on the outside of buildings, the accessibility. It's all the things that we're looking for. So that was a really important topic. And I thought that Sarah Neckerman and the Disabled Persons Protection Commission was also of importance to us. And, you know, again, we tend to have this, because a lot of us work with the seniors, we always tend to, you know, look into areas working with seniors. And what Sarah brought was working with younger people with, you know, some of these issues. So that was important for us. So, you know, I thought we had a lot of good topics today. And that's basically, I'll bring up the old business on the next meeting. Is there anything anyone else would like to share or add at this point? Lorraine.
David, did you want me to still pursue finding out if someone could come in and speak from an agency to speak to our commission regarding the hearing and, you know, the deaf and hearing community? Remember how I had mentioned it would be nice to have someone come in from an agency to educate us as far as the hearing, you know.
I think that would be a good idea.
I actually received, I did email Kathy Hayes, and she said I should probably contact the Mass Commission for the Deaf and Hearing, Hard of Hearing agency, and see if maybe they would send out a representative, similar to when Sarah, you know, came in and spoke. And
so what I would ask is this: the next meeting is going to be April 26th at 2 o'clock. I'm hoping that the April meeting and going forward will be back in person, but we can also you know, have Zoom involved so that we could have an outside speaker, you know, do it on Zoom. The next one will be the last Tuesday of the following month. So if you could get that person to come Tuesday, the 26th of April, that would be great. I don't have the May date in front of me, but whatever the final Tuesday of the month would be for May. So one of the next 2 months, that would be great.
How does the commission feel? Do they feel that would be something that they would like to, you know, have someone come from an agency similar to like DPPC that spoke today, and, you know, kind of I mean,
Yeah,
it's
she
still
may
a learning process for me too, so.
Yeah, she may have a line on those resources that would be useful for. So if we did have a resident in the community who was an ASL user, how do we contract with an interpreter for those meetings?
Mhm.
Can I just add my 2 cents?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Because I am involved in so many different projects, I am not going to be a member of this commission, but I will come when I can. I would love to hear more information, but I just can't add one more thing into my.
You are, I see you everywhere. You are very busy. You are very busy.
But I will ask Ms. DeLutis to please keep the disability issues front and center with some of the people at BCCR, because they are very well in tuned with race and gender issues, but I think ableism and disability rights are equally important.
I agree with you. Yes, yes. We tend, I don't know what it is, but for some reason or other, it has taken us a long time to realize that there are so many people that have so many different types of disabilities.
Right. Right.
And we're not necessarily tuned into them. So yeah, I will
Right.
contact somebody in BCCR and make sure that they add that to their list of needs.
Yeah, just to, keep it on like Janice's radar or Vernon's radar, Sam's radar, just like these are important things to keep in mind too. Not that they're more important than the others, but they should just be on the list.
Yes.
Equally important.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Evie.
Thank you. So lastly, I just have open discussion, opportunity for questions and other matters to be discussed. Is there anything anyone would like to bring up at this point?
Just a quick question. Did Chris Hartman become the ADA coordinator or not?
He did not yet. Mike Dudden said, well, that's an interesting idea. It's not as easy as you would think to make the change. He will look into it. I have it on my schedule to follow up with Mike again. I probably will not hear from him until I do follow up, and I plan to.
And I'm assuming nothing has happened with the sidewalk situation.
No, not at all. Nothing at all.
Of course not.
Nothing at all.
So it's not a problem until we make it a problem.
Right. Well, that's a good way of putting it. Follow up is few and far between, that's for sure. Other questions, other comments?
I just say good luck to Henry taking the, writing up these notes from this meeting.
Yes.
What is it, about 5-6 pages here? I don't know.
No, you get the short version.
So
Bless
Henry,
you, Henry.
do you take shorthand, Henry, or what?
Yeah, no, do that.
Oh, man.
What was that girl we had on the commission that used to bring a computer and?
Oh, she was good. What was her name?
Oh, she was excellent.
Oh, yeah.
I
Well, she was
can't
like
remember.
40. She was 40 years younger than us, much smarter, much
Oh, yeah.
quicker. Oh,
She was-
man. Yeah, I can't remember her name. That shows I'm getting old. Okay, the next meeting is Tuesday, the 26th at 2 o'clock. I'm hoping we can meet in person. In case
Yeah.
we can, I am going to ask for the date at the senior center so
Okay.
that we'd have a place to meet.
Yeah.
Ask for date. Okay. And
I
if
think being
there's,
able, David, to meet at the senior center, is definitely important because it's just easy access. And I
Oh,
mean, we
yeah.
probably would want to encourage people to participate too. It's a open meeting and maybe some people might want to join us, so. I mean, I just think it's just tough trying to park downtown.
when you have a meeting in person, if somebody wants to come in and see what's going on or whatever, it's a lot easier and friendlier than going onto Zoom. I think a lot
Yes.
of people,
Yeah.
especially of a certain age and older, get intimidated by going onto Zoom and uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
I can understand that. And you're right. I think it's important, but I thought that the limitations ended at the end of March. I'm not positive. So we shall see.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, so hopefully we can meet there in person. That would be great.
Just
That
book
would-
your reservation.
Yeah, I am. I have that
Yeah.
right here. Ask for the date. I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions?
No?
Well, it was a longer meeting. It was an hour and a half. It went very smoothly today, right from the beginning. So I look forward to getting together April 26th. Can we call to end the meeting? Gloria, I haven't heard from you today. Gloria,
So
do I have
here's
a
the way.
second?
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, second.
I second it.
Okay, Lorraine, thank you. Meeting is ended. Thank you all for your time and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Take
everyone.
care,
Thank you
everybody.
very much, everybody.
Bye.